Well, folks, as a wise man once said, the more you F around, the more you're going to find out. Now, the Sooners effed around last Saturday against UCF at Owen Field. However, they did not find out. But, gentlemen, they got a double dose of find out this afternoon at Cavisto Field, David Booth Memorial Stadium in Lawrence, Kansas. The Sooners had not lost to the Jayhawks since 1997. That's before I was alive, guys. I'm dating myself, but that's before I was alive. And yet that streak, the winning streak that I believe spanned 18 games heading into this matchup, is officially history. It's the Sooners fall 38-33 today. Parker Thune, Brandon Drum, Jesse Crittenden, Brian Clinton, the whole OU Insider squad here to break it down for you. And there's a million places we could start here, but Brandon, I'll kick it to you first. Where did the Sooners lose this game today?
Where?
I guess I'm asking more in a chronological sense. What was the point in the game at which there was the fateful decision / play?
No, yeah, you start. You can't go on the road against a 5-2 Kansas. This isn't your mom and dad's Kansas. It's not your grandpappy's Kansas. This is Mark Mangino, Lance Leipold, Kansas. You spot them 14 points, your ass is losing. I'm just letting you know. Like, and obviously Oklahoma, they came back 21-0 run in the second half or second quarter. They gave up 3 points, 21-17 halftime. That's fine. You're up 4, but you spotted them 14 points. You gave them the chance to believe, and the second you did that, you effed around, and then you have a defensive end as a up man on a kick return.
Oh gosh.
What in the hell? Oh, and by the way, this is how smart this is. Guess what they do the second time around after Marcus Stripling muffs that kick? They put a damn tight end in there. Oh! Somebody that can block and catch. Novel idea, guys. Novel idea. Sorry if I'm hating on coaches right now. That was stupid. And then you open up a can of worms, guys.
Oh gosh.
Here we go. And then Javonte Barnes. Sawchuk was good enough to win the game for you in the fourth quarter against UCF. How the hell is he not good enough for you now? Let's go look at his stats. He averaged almost 4 yards a carry. Guess how many yards they needed? What was it, like a 4th and 3 at one point, right? Guess who was averaging over 3 yards a carry? Tolly Walker's hurt. You might want to go to 2-7.
Oh, boy.
Just throwing that out there. And then the timeout on the punt you didn't need to do. And then, obviously, just you get the ball back, Ethan Downs doing Ethan Downs things like he has all season, and you freaking can't even – minus 2 yards, 24 seconds. Take it away, somebody else.
We don't get this type of inflection in Brandon's voice very often.
It was awful.
You can tell that he's in a different kind of mood after this game. And it was a miserable day all around. Rainy, frigid, obviously an agonizing loss for the Sooners. And there is so much to break down from everything that transpired over the course of over 4 hours. Given the lightning delay.
Dude, I hit on 4 things, and there's so much more to talk about.
Let's try to keep ourselves chronologically grounded here. And let's start from the very beginning. Let's just go cover to cover on this debacle that was today as the Sooners' unbeaten run here in 2023 comes to an end. Coach Clinton, you got the headset on over there. And sorry, was that?
It's been
it's been a while. So the Barstool, they had that coach. What was his name?
Coach Doug's.
Every time I look back at you, that's all I think about.
Wow,
that's our Coach Doug's.
I remember.
Yeah,
I remember.
So, Brian, obviously, to start things off, Dylan Gabriel throws the pick six. Gabriel is culpable, probably not a throw he should have made. Jalil Farouk, to an extent, is culpable, probably should have broken back on the ball, cut down the distance between himself and Gabriel to make that catch. But regardless, it's an egregious mistake to kick things off. Nothing that the Sooners can't recover from. But to me, the first sign of trouble came on the Sooners' ensuing drive when they got down into the red zone and very obviously decided, you know what? We can't trust Zach Schmidt to make a chip shot right now. We don't really have a choice but to go for this.
And Parker tweets it.
Yeah, that if you remember, after that happened, I walked over to you and I said, that's the very first time that Kansas has allowed somebody into the red zone and held them from scoring. All season long. They were 27 of 27 going into this week, allowing opponents to score inside the red zone. Oklahoma was the first team to not do so on their first drive after that game, or after that interception. So that was that should have been our first sign of how the day was going to go. Just missed opportunities all day long.
What took way too long for the Sooners to figure out, and Jesse, I'll turn it over to you for some analysis of this particular dynamic within the offense. But there came a point in the game at which it became apparent that the Sooners' best offense was Tawi Walker running straight downhill. And yet the Sooners took forever to get around to establishing the run with Tawi Walker.
That was the thing we saw in the first quarter. I mean, OU had 37 rushing yards in the first quarter, averaged 3.7 yards per game. It looked, or 3.7 yards per carry. It looked like we were in for another, oh man, it's going to be an inefficient day on the ground. Oh, and we had talked all week. I know Brian and I had talked about whatever team runs the ball most effectively is going to win this game. That's how it's going to go. And all of a sudden, Tawi Walker comes into the game and he's regularly breaking off 5, 6, 7 yards a gain. In the second quarter only, OU had 133 rushing yards, averaged 6.3 yards per carry, had 3 rushing touchdowns in the second quarter alone. And what do you know? That's a huge part of that 21-0 run. It's a big reason why OU was able to overcome that 14-0 early deficit. It was unlikely they were going to be able to continue that kind of pace, but it was the first time, I think, all season that OU completely established their will. And all of a sudden, in the running game, and all of a sudden it looked like the path to victory was there. And I think that was, again, Brandon, I agree with you. I think Gavin Sawchuk should have got more run down the stretch. But to me, that was the clearest evidence yet that Tawi Walker is the most productive, best running back on this team. He just is for where we are right now. And I think overall that was impressive. If you're going to look at one positive thing to take away, it was the way they ran the ball in the second quarter.
Now, amidst all of it, what was interesting, odd even, was the Sooners' decision to rotate so many offensive linemen in and out of the mix. Brandon, I'd be curious because I know both of you scrutinize offensive line play very, very closely. What do you think is the motive there? Why does that happen? Especially when it seemed as the Sooners had turned the page from the first half to the second half of the season, as though they finally had a group of 5 up front that was gelling.
Well, I think in this game it was a little different because they completely, Dylan Gabriel was 7 for 9 going into the fourth quarter. So they got completely away from the passing game. So at that point, you bring in your maulers, which is Jake Sexton at left tackle. Dude is a straight beast in the run game. And then you put in, they tried Savion Byrd instead of Matire, which my face can just say it all. If you're watching, you saw my face. I've been saying it all year. Let's not go there very often. And they tried it again. But Caden Green's a mauler. As a matter of fact, there was I think he got called for holding twice. And both times, you're penalizing a dude for whooping somebody's ass. Like that's all. That's what it was. Like he wasn't holding. He just completely whooped the dude's ass and buried it. What did you say? He took him to his funeral? I think he carried him to his funeral.
Yeah.
He carried him to his funeral, and they did the same thing with Sexton. They called him back on 1-2, and it was like, what are we doing? Football, that was praised and rewarded back in the day. Now it's a hold because you dominated somebody so bad that you're laying on top of them 12 yards down the field.
Oh boy, Brandon's about to go back in my day on us.
No. That's just what it was. And it's just, I don't know. And I think that's probably why you saw the rotation the way it was, is because when they went back to the pass, you saw obviously Rouse out there more. You saw obviously who was switching in and out with the green, Schaefer, right? Schaefer. Yeah. And you saw that rotation. So you had your Maulers and the guys that you were probably more balanced with that run and pass. And I think Sexton's a great pass blocker. So he's just a mauler. If you're going to run behind somebody, 76 is a fun dude to run behind. So I think that's probably why you saw it. He was like, look, if you're just going to run the ball, let's put our road graders in there and let's just run behind them. And that's what they did. I don't know. What do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I would say that this was one of those games where you kind of saw the offensive staff, at least on the field. Let's put our physical guys out there. Let's put the guys out there that can impose, some sort of physical threat and run the football. And they did that very effectively in the second quarter. And it was surprising how they came out in the second half. Early in the third quarter, it didn't necessarily feel like the same game plan. I don't know if maybe they just overthought it or got too cute, but there was just some really questionable things going on behind the offensive line. I would say, just to piggyback off of what Jesse said, it is promising to see some of the movement that we saw from the offensive line in the run game behind Sexton. Sexton and Green together are going to be a force when it comes to running the zone scheme going forward. I'm really excited about that. And, I'll give you a little bit of solace here. You're only going to have to watch that officiating that way for 4, maybe 5 games, and things are going to change a little bit because
it just means more.
It's going to be a little bit different whenever they move conferences. So
and they play like that, and it's not going to mean much more than another 6 and 7
they
season.
might just be
now.
hurt,
You breached the topic, Brandon. So let's go there. Penalties killed this team today, and penalties was not the only thing that came back to bite the Sooners. Where in the end, but season highs in both penalties and penalty yards, especially on a couple of crucial drives in this football game. And in a couple of crucial moments, the Sooners succumbed to penalties that killed momentum. And especially on the road against a scrappy and very prepared Kansas team, those are the types of mistakes, again, guys, where you can get away with them on your home field against a team like UCF. Maybe their morale is a little bit lower because they haven't won a game in Big 12 play yet, but on the road against a better Kansas team, a very objectively better Kansas team, you can't afford those same blips.
11 penalties for 101 yards today for OU, 11 for 101 compared to Kansas, who had 5 for 55. So OU more than doubled the total amount of penalties for Kansas and nearly had double the yardage.
And one of the most costly ones wasn't even it didn't really add much because it just gave Kansas a brand new set of downs, 1st and goal. And it ended up costing them.
Second straight week, the Sooners have effectively put together a goal line stand only to see it erased on what would have been 4th down due to a personal foul.
Correct. Well, and on that possession, that was the same possession, I believe, that OU got 30 yards of penalty yards
back to back.
Yeah. It was the unnecessary roughness penalty. I think it was on Dolby. It was on Kendall Dolby, out of bounds, and then an OU coach got called for unsportsmanlike conduct. Yeah. So not only did Kansas get the first down, this was early in the 4th quarter. Not only did Kansas get the first down on that play, you add 15 yards because of the Kendall Dolby penalty. You add 15 more because of the penalty on the coach. And then then you get the targeting penalty inside the 3-yard line. That ended up being huge. Kansas took the lead on that on that drive. They ended up taking a 32-27 lead, and 30 of those yards were on the same. Were on 2 penalties on the same sequence.
So that coach was berating. We won't get into that, but let me ask you all this. I want to ask all y'all's opinion. Ryan Aber pulled it up when they were doing the review on the targeting on Reggie Pearson. Everybody on the telecast, even Blandino, was like, that is not targeting, because he slipped. Jason Bean cut and slipped. He didn't slide. The dude slipped and fell. And then as you see Pearson he was kind of coming in, but then he got shoved in the back, which crazy that I don't know that are they allowed to review like blocking the backs on that if they see it, or do they just let it be?
From what I understand, everything about targeting is reviewable.
So
like it is a subjective call, and it is a thoroughly subjective review, which is one of the major beefs I have with
he was clearly trying not to hit him. He was like sliding.
Targeting has gotten out of control in college football, and this is a way broader conversation. And in the grand scheme of things, absent that call, the Sooners probably lose the game today.
Yeah, they lose.
It didn't affect the outcome of the game substantially, but targeting has gotten out of control, and it needs to be fixed. It's been this way for darn near a decade.
Look, if you want to go back, you want to do questionable calls, you want to do on the flip side of things, Kansas has like a 40-yard run called back, holding, and the dude threw the flag when the dude was 20 yards down the field, past everybody. OU got lucky. They missed the field goal on that drive, which allowed OU to drive down and go up on Kansas, which in reality, if that call is not made, see how it can go both ways, folks. That's what we're trying to show y'all here. That OU is minimal as Kansas was penalized. They had some critical penalties in bad spots for them that allowed OU to keep going, i.e. in the first half with Nick Anderson on the pass, which was a good call, but it was a bad penalty on Kansas' part. Oklahoma goes down, they score. So it's just those type of things. It's not just Oklahoma. Oklahoma just did it a lot more. A C note. I don't remember the last time I ever seen a C note as far as yardage when it comes to penalties, guys.
From an Oklahoma team?
Not from anybody. Been a minute.
I wanted to mention here about the Reggie Pearson, the targeting. I forgot. Eric Bailey of the Tulsa World actually emailed. He's the pool reporter. He emailed the Big 12 asking basically for the explanation of that call, and the official response back from the Big 12 is the indicator is taking aim and lowering the shoulder to make forcible contact to the head and neck area of a defenseless player. So in their view, Reggie Pearson,
he was taking aim.
He purposefully hit the head and neck area of Jason Bean.
But we all saw, and everybody else saw him trying to dodge him. Yeah. Well, it is what it is. It's subjective, as you said.
Well, and it's going to cause Reggie Pearson to miss the first half of Bedlam next week,
which is critical
because
huge. Our Robert Spears Jennings could be out for quite a while.
And
Peyton Bowen's not healthy.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and okay, we're deep into the secondary. Let's bring this back around, Brandon, because I know we were talking about it up in the press box after the game. Not having Gentry Williams today hurt for Oklahoma.
He's your best corner. I know everybody loves Woody Washington.
No, you're right.
Gentry Williams is your best corner, and if today didn't prove that, I don't know what will. God bless Kenai Walker. I felt bad for him because you were coming in and you're replacing a guy that has just played otherworldly so far this season and set the standard so high at that cornerback spot. In a spot that was questionable coming into the season, who's going to be opposite of Woody Washington? You know, he's the best. He's the best. Gentry Williams coming in there and just stole the show, and not having him. And I'm here to tell you guys, it's a crapshoot if he's back next week. So we'll see. something. We're not going to dive into any of the details on it, but it's a sucky situation because it just came out of the blue, just out of nowhere. I mean, he's warming up, and then all of a sudden, he's not playing. So it's a rough deal. They got to get. You got to get Josiah Wagner. You got to get Josiah Wagner. You got to get Makari Vickers. You got to get Jacoby Johnson ready to rock and see if they can play, because some of the things we saw from Kanai Walker, I wanted y'all to dive in on this.
No, it's just
it was bad. Like just complete and utter.
I mean, he looked lost on the most critical play, arguably of the entire game, which was that 4th and 6, the second 4th down that Kansas converted on their final scoring drive, where Lawrence Arnold ends up reeling in the pass and trotting out of bounds inside the Oklahoma 10-yard line. Kanai Walker was nowhere near in position to make that play.
This episode of the OU Insider Under the Visor podcast is sponsored in part by BetterHelp. Do you ever feel like your brain is getting in its own way? Do you struggle with anxiety, stress, indecisiveness, lack of focus? Well, folks, therapy helps you figure out what's holding you back so that you can work for yourself instead of against yourself. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, try BetterHelp today. It's entirely online, and it's designed to be convenient and flexible so that you can tailor your therapy to your schedule. All you have to do to get started is fill out a brief questionnaire. You'll then be matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/OU Insider today to get 10% off your first month of therapy. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/OU Insider. This episode is brought to you in part by HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Especially during football season, I hardly have a break in my schedule, but I still try to eat right. That's why I love HelloFresh's meal kits. They make it incredibly easy for me to cook healthy, delicious meals at home in just minutes. Even though the fall can feel jam-packed, HelloFresh makes whipping up a home-cooked dinner actually doable with quick and easy options, including their 15-minute meals. That's less time than it takes to get delivery. And with everything pre-portioned and delivered right to your door every week, it really is a no-brainer. We all know HelloFresh takes the hassle out of mealtime, but did you know it can also save you money? HelloFresh is 25% less expensive than takeout, so that means you get an easy home-cooked meal on the table and more money back in your pocket. Go to HelloFresh.com/50OU Insider and use code 50OU Insider for 50% off plus free shipping. Again, HelloFresh.com/50OU Insider and use promo code 50OU Insider for 50% off plus free shipping. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.
He busted just the previous 4th down was on him too. He was supposed to switch, so he had outside containment on as far as the covers went. They run a little slip out of trips, and he trails the drive route and just the dude's wide open, just standing over there. And I mean, Brent Venables was out at the hash screaming at him. It was bad.
Well, I think I mentioned in the press box before that play that
you said they look
3
lost.
Receivers bunched up, and I was like, before the ball was snapped, it was like the defensive backs look lost. They look confused, and all Kansas had to do was run a 5-yard little out route, and they easily picked up but it was clear before the ball was even snapped that Kansas was going to pick up the first down using a very easy play like that.
And Brent Venables was kicking himself after the game for not calling a timeout there. And again, you can't point to one specific thing that cost Oklahoma the game today because it was a combination of a lot of things. But certainly in that moment, and Venables was very upfront and apologetic about it, probably take the timeout there. And
what I want to ask you guys this: as far as why do you think they kept trotting him out there, considering like the very first big gaffe was the Bean run where he was dancing? The dude
is Jason Bean the new Skylar Thompson?
That 38-yard touchdown run from Bean, where he just kept it and like kept it on the fake and just kept going right, and nobody. I don't think an OU player touched him.
No, he
No,
I don't think
one that
anybody
should
touched
have
him.
Was miming with the Kansas wide receiver on the goal line.
It was Kanai. It was Kanai Walker down. It was Kanai Walker down there. I mean, he was just getting straight. He was just getting beat up,
dude.
He was just getting beat up.
I'm so sorry. I felt so bad for him today. It was a rough day for Kanai.
It
Walker.
was, but that's
It was rough.
again. And then, well, actually, if we're going to talk about that play, we should talk about what set up that play, which was the Jalil Farouk handoff up the middle, where he got absolutely blown up, fumbled it. Kansas recovered it. Very next play is that Jason Bean 38-yard touchdown. And that goes into another discussion about
Go ahead.
how weird this backfield situation is. And I know Tawee Walker started dealing with some injuries in the second half, but it is very clear to me that, especially over the last 2 weeks, really the last 3, that this coaching staff or Jeff Lebby has seen something in using Jalil Farouk as a running back, as a traditional running back lined up right by Dylan Gabriel. It has not worked. Again today, 5 carries for 18 yards. So it's not good enough to justify using it. And that fumble right there is the exact example of a running back is used to taking that kind of hit in that scenario.
Yeah.
A wide receiver isn't. And that's a huge play. It's not only just a turnover, but again, literally the next play, Kansas scores, and they took the lead on that touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge sequence of events.
It's the backfield is utterly baffling to me right now, and arguably the most baffling maneuver today as it pertains to the backfield was the decision to trot Javonte Barnes out there for the final drive that Oklahoma ended up having prior to their last-ditch scramble down the field. But immediately following the Ethan Downs interception, all you need is 1 first down to end the game. 1 first down, and that game is over. And after putting Javonte Barnes in mothballs for a full month, that's when you're going to choose to bring the guy out? Now, I understand Tawee Walker was hurt, and I'm mindful of that. I don't want to act like that didn't play into the personnel decisions, because obviously it did. But everything about that drive, from the personnel groupings to the play calling to just the overall mentality top down about how that drive was approached, the Sooners didn't deserve to win the football game after that drive.
Correct. I mean, 100%. That's I don't understand. There's not a more rhythm-based position in football than the running back. When a guy gets in a rhythm, you could make the argument for quarterback, but when you've got a guy in rhythm who is running the ball well, feels comfortable behind the offensive line, and is really starting to feel himself like we saw from Gavin Sawchuk last week, I don't understand why if Tawee Walker is hurt, why that's not who you go to. And again, I don't make the personnel decisions, but it doesn't take a genius to know that whenever you've got a guy in Javonte Barnes who hasn't touched the field, you're putting him in not only for the first time in over a month, but you're putting him in a situation that is as high intensity as possible. It's not perfect conditions to be breaking a guy back in coming off of injury to begin with. And there couldn't have been more than just a singular thought go into that, because if you really think about what you should have done, there's no reason why Gavin Sawchuk isn't the guy that goes in. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. He was good enough last week in the most critical point of the game, and Oklahoma's trying to go down and take the lead. You run him out there then, but he wasn't ready for this. Like, you needed to. I guess my point is like, if you're not going to do that, and you feel like you've got to trot out Javonte Barnes, and you're going to be running a play action, and this is on the last drive even, is what I'm talking about. They ran a play action, like they faked the play action, remember, which takes another whole second off the clock other than just a quick throw. And we're talking about the final drive when they ran a play action.
A play action on that drive after a downs would have been nice, but
Well, there you go. That would have been great, but it's not believable because every time you had Javonte in there up to that point, outside of where he ran it in or where he got them down to like the 2-yard line on like 2 carries, that to me, the defense isn't going to be even susceptible to any play action fake at that point because you probably needed 27 and or 29 in there. And that's just the reality of it because they didn't. Javonte Barnes had 18 yards on 5 carries. He averaged 3.4. That was on literally one drive. Those 5 carries took place essentially. Three of the carries did. The other 2 were on that second to last drive where he just ran into the back of the offensive lineman. But which has been his Achilles heel all season, running in the back of the offensive line. So baffling, I guess, is the nice way to say it. It's just a lack of, I don't know, personnel groupings at period, like in rotations, period. Like if that was to happen in the NFL, could you imagine what would happen? They would be all over the GM and the coaches like crazy, right? At some point, if I'm Brent Venables, I walk into that offensive room and I'm saying, look, the rest of the year, 29, 27, we're running with those 2. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You can throw 2 in there when he gets ready to go fully, but he hasn't been ready to go all season.
He's missing a gear right now.
Yes.
You can see it.
Can I just go in on the running game?
Go in.
Do what you need to do, dude.
So
do it.
Take everything else away from this game. Imagine I tell you on Friday night that Oklahoma's going to rush for 269 yards.
They win.
An average
win the
4.9 yards a carry.
Easy. Okay. So whenever it's crunch time, and Kansas has taken the lead in the second half, and you lean on that running game, it just, to me, it feels like the play calling, I don't know what happened. And again, I need to go back and look at it, watch the game, not through a camera lens. But to me, it feels like there was no rhythm, but there also wasn't, it became very predictable. I could see even from the end zone, they ran this same exact, whether it was zone insert or wham, whichever one it was, you guys could probably tell me better from the press box view, but they would shift the running back, Oklahoma would, they would shift the running back offset, and then he would switch sides on Gabriel. Every time they ran that exact same zone insert play. And Kansas knew it after the first 2 or 3 times. And so
you can't slip stuff past a guy like Lance Leipold.
It's just
can't get predictable with a guy like that. It
becomes these little things like that just are so frustrating because we've all seen what Jeff Lebby is capable of as an offensive play caller. We've seen it when things are in rhythm. He's one of the best in the country. The problem is we've seen 8 games. We've seen 8 completely different games offensively, it feels like. There's no rhythm to what's going on. It feels as if this is the first time I've watched Oklahoma football my entire life. This is the first year that I don't know what to expect week to week offensively.
That was probably the quote of the podcast. We've seen 8 different games offensively all season.
And it's 100% true. And sorry, Jesse, I know you want to jump in, and I'll let you hear it in just a second. But one thing I want to say, and Jesse and I were driving back to the hotel talking about it too, is it doesn't feel like, Jeff Lebby is a matchup guy. Like he's gonna create and exploit the best matchups, but you don't see that happening right now, at least not with regularity. Mm-hmm. This team has talent. This offense has skill position players with specific strengths, and it doesn't feel like they're playing to the strengths of those players right now. Nick Anderson caught one pass today.
Are we minimizing Angelo Anthony's injury?
Jesse asked the same thing.
Potentially.
I think that's part of it. I don't think that's all of it. I think that's part of it, definitely.
I would argue though, where did Drake Stoops go in crunch time? Because there was an opportunity, there were opportunities there, but we got away from it.
That was going to be kind of in the discussion of Jeff Lebby, or in discussion of offensive play calling and weird substitutions and personnel and stuff. I think that possession after the Ethan Downs interception, where one first down wins you the game. It's not only that it's Javonte Barnes in there, so that's the weird personnel thing, right? It's not just what you were just saying about how the play calling got predictable. Kansas knew exactly what was coming. You know why they knew exactly what was coming? OU didn't do anything to test Kansas down the field at all.
Correct.
Not even a little bit.
Yeah.
And we saw this last week against UCF, and I know the weather was bad. You can tell me that.
Sure.
OU attempted 19 passes.
Right.
You know who attempted 32 passes today? Kansas. You know who made plays down the field in the passing game when they needed to? Jason freaking Bean did. That's what beat Oklahoma. And to me, the weather is not a good enough excuse to wipe away the fact that OU just simply did not test Kansas down the field. Dylan gave me 41 passing yards at halftime.
Yeah.
The only shot he took
flicking it down the field, man.
The only shot he took downfield all day was that desperation ball on the final drive that miraculously Brennan Thompson came up with.
Yeah.
That was
That
5
was
yards.
really the only time.
That was a punt.
It looked like it.
It
I
did.
don't know if that ball slipped coming out of his hand or what, but gosh, that's 2 times that Brennan Thompson has made very, very difficult catches.
And they were both punts.
2 very underthrown footballs this season. But again, guys, you don't see the Sooners maximizing and exploiting the mismatches that their personnel can create on offense. And look, I know Jeff Lebby's taking a ton of heat right now on social media, and to an extent, deservedly so. I think more than one thing can be true, right? It can certainly be true that Jeff Lebby left a lot on the table today. And it can also be true that Jeff Lebby is one of the top offensive coordinators in the nation. And
no, you're going to get blasted for that. But go ahead.
No, I think it's true. Objectively speaking, he is in the upper echelon and probably superior to whatever alternative you might be able to yank off the street or pull up.
I agree. But
yeah, but Jesse, do you have that quote in front of you from Lebby in post game? Because gosh, man,
I do.
This was just brutal, and I want everybody to have the full context for it. So I'm going to have Jesse read it verbatim. This is Lebby on the approach to that final drive,
or that drive after the Ethan Downs interception.
The second,
yes,
second to last drive.
Sorry, I keep saying final drive.
No, you're good. I actually just wrote a notepad centered around this on OUinsider.com. But here's the quote. The question was, what we just went through, that OU went 3 and out. They not only had had a negative net of 2 yards on that drive, they only took up 24 seconds. Kansas got the ball with over 2 minutes left, eventually drove down the field. So the question was, you ran 3 straight rushing plays that didn't really go anywhere, made Kansas take their timeouts. Like, what was the thinking there? The full quote is, we wanted to make sure they used all 3 timeouts, but we were trying like heck to get a first down. We felt like running the ball and having the ability to pin them there without any timeouts and make them go the length of the field. That was the right thing to do. That's why I ran it there on 3rd down. Got to execute better. Had a chance to win the game if we stay on the field and get 1 first down, but we don't do it. There's just a lot of conflicting.
You're hearing stuff out of both sides of the mouth in that quote. And look, if you're running the ball on 3rd and 12, you're not trying like heck to get a first down. Nope. You're not. You're passing the buck and saying, okay, we're going to trust the defense to make a stop.
Yep.
Look where that got you. There was no effort. There was no effort to get a first down right there. No serious effort, at least.
Well, and it's incredibly frustrating when objectively 1 first down wins the game.
That's it. That's all you got to get is 1 first down.
Yeah, I'll say this though. I've been hard on him because of this game in general after defending Lebby for a long time. But I've gone in on him in the podcast and then the instant analysis that we have on YouTube and stuff like that. If one of those runs hit, we're not talking about that. And so I get why he's saying you got to execute better, blah, blah, blah. I still think on that third down, though, okay, if you don't get a first down on down 1, down 2, after obviously the penalty, they get the holding penalty on Matwire, right? Drop them back 10 yards. You've got to start getting creative, getting guys out in space. If you had Stogner over the middle. You had a fourth down early in the game.
Yep.
And you hit Stogner on a play action dump pass, essentially. It was like a 4th and 6,
It was a nice play.
And it was a
nice
play.
play.
That went like 10, 15 yards, right? Or I don't know how many yards you went. How many?
Never went
you
back.
It was 12 yards on 4th and 3.
12 yards, 4th and
Nice
3.
play.
Why not try to revert back to that and see if it worked? And if it doesn't, okay, but nobody's going to fault you for trying to do something other than on 3rd and 12, we'll just turn around and hand the ball off. You know what I mean? Okay, now 4th down, turn around and hand the ball off. And you're just like, we get it. You're trying to run the clock out and you made them waste timeouts. That's fine.
There's too much time. Sorry to interrupt. There's too much time left in the game to only be focused on Kansas getting rid of their timeouts. That's the thing. Kansas got the ball back with over 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
You can't. If there's like a minute left in the game, maybe. But
24 seconds. 24 seconds.
OU's possession went 24 seconds, and it compounded by the fact that Josh Elzinga's punt, or Luke Elzinga, or wait. Yeah, Luke Elzinga, sorry. Luke Elzinga's punt went into the end zone for a touchback. That compounded it. But
special teams continue to be very unspecial for this team. And it manifests in little things like Jacoby Johnson kind of getting lost on that punt, and Elzinga's it was a very good punt from Elzinga, but he needed somebody down there to corral it. And when nobody was there, nobody was in position, bounced in the end zone and it nets 20 yards. And then, of course, earlier in the game, you had a much more significant gaffe with Marcus Stripling muffing the kickoff and handing possession back to Kansas, which didn't cost you any points, but was still alarming. And you mentioned it right off the top, Brandon. Now, that's on top of the lingering uncertainty over whether you can trust Zach Schmidt to make any given kick.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, there is a kid up at the University of Nebraska right now by the name of Tristan Alvano. And if Tristan Alvano had a scholarship offer to the University of Oklahoma, he would be at the University of Oklahoma right now.
I remember that, yeah.
The University of Nebraska gave him a scholarship offer. Oklahoma did not. He committed to Nebraska. That kid's their starting place kicker as a true freshman and hit a 55-yarder today against Purdue, guys. So, again, with how much instability you have had on special teams in general through the first year and a half of this regime, maybe it's time to dole out a scholarship or two to a kid who's worth it. And you have a very talented, very effective place kicker coming in as a PWO in the 2024 class, and Liam Evans, which that's something for Sooner fans to look forward to. He's perfect as a senior in high school thus far on the year with multiple makes of 50-plus yards. But you got to start taking those things seriously, more seriously than you are right now, because they continue to burn you week in and week out. Saw it today, saw it last week, saw it against Texas too. They don't always cost the Sooners. They're not always going to cost the Sooners, at least when the scoreboard hits 0. But it was a factor in the equation today.
So go ahead. You hear Coach Venables talk about hidden yardage all the time, how important that is.
Yeah.
I hate to pile on Zach Schmidt because he didn't try any field goals today, but I think that you're starting to see some things pile up there, because not only do you not have a field goal try on the day, especially when you're inside the Kansas 20, you don't try that. But Kansas had 6 kick returns for 114 yards today. Oklahoma had 3 for 25, which means one guy's getting it out of the back of the end zone and another guy isn't. That's a problem. you're getting there are issues, these yardage, these things that you're seeing pile up, and your punt average being under 40. There's just, like you just said, the special teams at one point in the season seemed to be a strength, and I believe it's becoming something. It's almost a liability. It is a liability at this point.
Now,
Can I
Go ahead, Brandon.
real quick? The reason I will say that they had more chances to return is because Kansas, ironically, with the wind at their back, they actually used it and kicked more. They scored more with that. But on the kick return part, I do want to touch on this because that was a strength earlier in the year. Was Oklahoma was setting themselves up with good kick returns. Did anybody notice what they did every time they got it? And I know it was by design, the way Kansas was kicking it to Farouk. But if you knew they were going to pooch it up in the air to Farouk and make him have to catch it near the sideline, why not try to run something to the wide side of the field? They did not do that. It was just like straight ahead into just a pile of dudes. And instead, that was another key factor on that final drive, by the way. And we talked about it.
Yep.
He catches it on like the 5 or 6 yard line. And instead of fair catching it and downing it and them having 55 seconds left, Oklahoma has 48 seconds because he spent 7 seconds running into whatever to get to what yard line? The 25.
To that point, on the topic of special teams
Football
and
IQ.
the clock, let's talk about the moment in the game that didn't seem significant at the time, but that loomed way large come the end of the game. And that is on the Sooners' opening possession of the second half. They get into no man's land, take a delay of game penalty, and trot the punt team onto the field. Inexplicably, for whatever reason, they don't get in position. They're not ready to punt the football off before the play clock has wound all the way down.
Jacoby Johnson was on the field.
And Brent Venables calls a timeout. And in the moment, I was standing there on the sideline going, oh, man, that was a pointless timeout. Hope you don't need that one later. And, well, looking at the way that final drive went down, gentlemen, wouldn't it have been nice for Oklahoma to have an extra timeout in their pocket?
I'm so glad you brought that up. And I think within the discussion of special teams, you frame this to what we all said last weekend about the special teams issues. It didn't get Oklahoma against UCF, but against an opponent with better coaching and better athletes, those type of things are going to hurt you. And what we saw with the special teams today were the huge mess ups that everyone sees, like the Marcus Stripling muffed punt. We saw the less noticeable things like the Elzinga punt going into the back of the end zone after the Ethan Downs interception. And then we see the little stuff like that goes way under the radar, but all of that stuff adds up. And that's the kind of stuff we were talking about last weekend about, didn't get you against UCF, but it's that little stuff when you're playing a team, you're playing at Kansas, a better team, all that stuff adds up. And I guarantee you this, if more of this stuff happens against Oklahoma State next weekend, Oklahoma State will run all over Oklahoma and win that game.
Ooh, boy.
This episode of the OU Insider Under the Visor podcast is brought to you in part by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. So instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Prize Picks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. And this weekend, my entry is going to start with Dallas Cowboys wide receiver and former Sooner CeeDee Lamb, who I believe is going to go for more than his projected receiving yards total against the Los Angeles Rams. Go to prizepicks.com/insider and use code INSIDER for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/insider and use code INSIDER for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
They get Ollie Gordon next week, man.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
So
that is
to that line. I think another thing to that is OU's rushing defense has been really good this year. It was not very good today.
No, it was not. Not good at all.
Kansas averaged 5.5 yards per carry, way above OU season average. That played a huge role.
There was a lot of 2022 in this game today. That's what it felt like. It felt like we were watching the 2022 Oklahoma Sooners, not the 2023 Oklahoma Sooners.
What did I say? What did I say? It kind of felt to me it was like a combination of West Virginia last year and 2019 K-State. So many things. Just, do you remember that game?
No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right.
I mean, it had so many where like Oklahoma comes back. They make a run, they get ahead, only to blow that lead, only to then have to make another big comeback, and then they get that chance and then just blow it. And obviously Oklahoma got in 2019 Stogner, they got that onside kick and nobody touched it early or anything. That's neither here nor there. Oklahoma's going to go down and score. They got Jalen Hurts at quarterback. But there was so many things as far as the mistakes, the special teams muffs, all that type of stuff. And another thing last year, which makes me think of West Virginia. What happened last year at West Virginia?
Well, a lot of things happened. You need to be more specific than that.
What happened at the end of the game? I can't remember if it was West Virginia. It was West Virginia. At the end of the game, somebody makes an interception, and we all think Oklahoma's won the game, only to watch them struggle to move the ball, and then the defense has to go down. They're exhausted, and they give up a game-winning field goal as time run out.
I think you're thinking of Tech with that specific circumstance.
The Ethan Downs interception?
Yeah, that was C.J. Colden picking off Tech.
No, but didn't Ethan Downs have a pick last year late in the game against West Virginia? Is that not right?
All that mediocrity is starting to run together.
Okay, anyway, I'm probably wrong, but whatever. He did have a pick, I felt like, last year, did he not?
I don't believe so.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong. All right. Anyways, point being is that I don't even know where to go anymore, just because this team played like 2022, and as you said, if they go up to Stillwater next week and they play anywhere remotely close to this, they are going to be ran out. And Oklahoma State would love nothing more than to step on OU's throat as they head off to the SEC and leave them in the wake of the Big 12. They would love it.
And I think Dylan Gabriel could have strung together a game-winning drive today to beat Kansas, and regardless of the outcome, regardless of whether Oklahoma put this game in the win column or the loss column, I would have walked away feeling about the same, which is I think we know what this team is at this point.
Overachievers.
Well, perhaps. But to me, this is a team that is capable of winning a Big 12 championship, and that's about the ceiling. They play their best ball, they can win the Big 12 championship. I don't know that they have the juice to go much further beyond that, or any further beyond that. And I think that's fine. Year 2 of the Brent Venables era, if that's what you are in 2023, no issue with that, especially with the knowledge that there's going to be a similar leap year 1 or year 2 to year 3 as there was year 1 to year 2. You're going to get Jackson Arnold in the mix next year. You have another top tier recruiting class coming in. You're going to have better retention across the roster, not going to have to process nearly as many guys. You'll have better buy-in top to bottom. And so there's a lot more reason to be optimistic about this team come year 3 and heading into year 3 than there was even heading into year 2. So again, I think the Sooners are at worst right on schedule, at best maybe a little ahead of schedule, that is. But you can't play 2 consecutive games and leave that much on the field, make that many mistakes, and not expect people to start to get real apprehensive about what type of football team you truly are. And Oklahoma is, how do I put this? I don't know that they have an identity right now.
100%.
What do they hang their hat on as a football team? There's no one thing that jumps out at you. And
Used to be physicality on defense and offense, and that's just not. That's what everybody talks about. Texas.
They're more talented and better coached than the vast majority of the teams in the Big 12, and that will have them in contention to go to Arlington and win the conference title at season's end. But I think what we have seen from this team, especially in the last 2 weeks, and how many lessons they should have learned against UCF and didn't apply against Kansas, this is not a team that is ready to play with the big boys in college football yet.
That's the biggest frustration. Everything you just said, Parker, is I think it's possible. It's almost impressive that Oklahoma had a chance, like a legitimate chance to win this game today, considering how bad they played. It's almost impressive, but it's year 2. You're coming from 6-7 last season, but to have back-to-back weeks where it's not just bad play, it's head-scratching personnel decisions, it's head-scratching mistakes, it's stuff that simply can't happen.
Right.
That's the thing you're concerned about. So I think you're going into Oklahoma State next weekend, who Oklahoma State's beating Cincinnati 31-7 right now in the fourth quarter. I promise you, if like we saw what this team did the first 6 weeks, we saw what they did against Texas. Consistency is not like, it's not that you have to play that well every single week. It's just a little disheartening to have back-to-back performances like that. And if they play like they have the last 2 weeks moving forward, they will lose another couple of games. And that would be disappointing considering how they started the season. That's what I'll say.
Is there any concern that, they hit the wall after 3 games last year, that maybe after 7 weeks this year, it kind of has that feel a little bit to where they're just kind of, now they've hit a wall and it's going to be a roller coaster the rest of the season again, almost like 2022. I'm not saying I don't want to put the bad juju on you Sooners fans. I'm just throwing that thought out there. I just would like to hear, because I'm kind of starting to not so much believe that's the case, but if they trot out another game like this, I will 100% believe that's probably what's going down at this point.
OU desperately needs to get healthy. That's the thing I'll mention.
Bring up the most consequential injury of the day, which was Danny Stutzman.
Huge. And it's Stutzman missing the entire second half. It's Peyton Bowen not being able to play. It's Gentry Williams not being able to play. That stuff, those aren't excuses, and Brent Venables made sure to say that. Like, OU still should have had enough talent and juice to win this game today, even without those guys. But OU's got to get healthy, because if they don't, and they can't fix these inconsistencies, these head scratching decisions, then yes, that is a concern.
Yeah, and I'll, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but like if you look back from June or July and have the conversation of Oklahoma 7-1 going into Bedlam, I think you take that, and I think as a fan or what have you, you're happy with that output. The problem is that this fan base got to see what Oklahoma is capable of in the Cotton Bowl and what this team looks like when everybody's on the same page. I also think that the youth of this team is starting to show, because when you think about it, Jaron Kanak, who plays a huge role on this, a lot of people forget he's a true sophomore. Deshaun McCullough is a true sophomore. Peyton Bowen is a true freshman. I mean, the guys on that side of the ball that make plays and stick out. Gentry Williams. I mean, there's so many young guys that have such a large role on this team that this is the first true adversity that they're feeling in a role where they have control of what happens. And you're seeing these guys have to learn and expand what they have to do. And that's not easy. And again, I said this to you on the way here, Brandon, that last week, the coaching perspective coming into Monday is we almost lost this game. We found a way to win, and that's a good thing, but we've got some things to work on. There's not that positive going into the field the film room on Monday. They lost a game, and you've got to figure it out. And like you just said, Oklahoma State's coming up. Ollie Gordon's got 196 yards against the 18th ranked rushing defense in the country right now, and there's still 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter.
Now, I don't want to take anything away from Kansas and Lance Leipold, because I'm a huge Lance Leipold fan. Anybody that listens to this podcast or to me in general knows I love Lance Leipold, believe believed from the get-go that he was the right guy for that job, and I'm so impressed with how he's turned around Kansas football and done it ahead of schedule. So I don't want to take anything away from what they did today, because that was a resilient effort from a resilient football team and a very well-coached and well-organized football team. But more so than Kansas beat Oklahoma today, Oklahoma beat Oklahoma today.
Mhm.
And that goes back to what we had talked about in the aftermath of the Texas game, Brandon. The only thing standing between Oklahoma and 12-0 was Oklahoma.
Here we
And
are.
this is the same team that beat themselves so many times in 2022. Again, there was a lot of 2022 in that game today, and they are the reason why they're 7-1 instead of 8-0 today. They got it. You can only point the finger back at yourself after a performance like that.
Here's what it comes down to. Beat Oklahoma State next weekend. Doesn't matter how you do it. Beat Oklahoma State next weekend. Everything feels a lot better.
And that kind of where I was going with that is, yeah, you beat yourself today more so than Kansas beat you. But guess what? The team you play next week, that's a team that can beat you.
Mm-hmm.
You might not
They
have
will
to
love
beat
doing
yourself. You might not have to beat yourself to lose that football game. So you better figure it out.
I'm going to pat myself on the back
Yeah, you should.
because I kept saying all year, I was like, yeah, they lost South Alabama. It's still going to be Oklahoma's toughest game. And that's saying something because Oklahoma just lost today in Kansas. Because I said these next 2 weeks are so critical for Oklahoma moving forward. And I said that back at the beginning of the year. I was like, dude, you get past Texas. Texas is Texas. But I thought there was a chance of Oklahoma either losing 3 in a row. And we even said them going 2-1 during this 3-game span would have been great. But that's because everybody thought, oh, they're just going to lose to Texas and then beat Kansas and Oklahoma State and probably nail biters or whatever on the road. Now you have to win this next one. You have to. If you want to play for the Big 12 title, you got to take care of business this week, because then you got West Virginia at home, you go to BYU, and you get TCU at home. I think those last 2 are very, very winnable games, and Oklahoma's obviously going to be favored in all 4 games, But this is make or break week for Oklahoma. It is. The 2023 season all hinges on the first week of November, because it is big time for them regarding the 2023 season. And I think that's probably a really good way to end the podcast, to be honest.
Yep.
If y'all want to.
It's gut check time.
Yeah.
Time to look in the mirror.
Well, at risk of being glass half full guy, could be a lot worse. I mean, your play callers could be Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch.
Fair.
True.
Hey, he's already called
Oklahoma.
it. He thinks Oklahoma's going up to Stillwater and winning, baby.
I do. I just have a feel. I don't know why. There's a feeling that this is just back against the wall. Yeah.
Hey, do you feel that way because Oklahoma's close? They're really close.
No,
really close.
They're
really close.
Dude, every OU fan watching just jump through the screen.
I don't feel that. I like this team having to. There's no choice but to face adversity and rise. So it sucks, but that's the kind of position you put yourself
in. You
in.
can't explain it away like you could last week against UCF because you lost.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
got no choice but to punch back now.
Yep.
And it's going to be easier said than done against Ollie Gordon and Oklahoma State. Hey, folks, this post-game podcast is brought to you by Olipop, the soda that's good for you. Promo code CHAMPU20 at drinkolipop.com. For those of you that haven't yet tried it, will get you 20% off your very first order. 9 grams of fiber in every can, natural flavors, natural sweeteners, nothing artificial in any of Olipop's 16 delicious flavors. So give it a try today. Brandon, you're a lot more accustomed to giving the OU Insider sales spiel than I am, so I'll turn it over to you for that.
Yeah, I mean, go to OUinsider.com. We all got stuff coming, whether recruiting, team news, team notes heading into Bedlam. You can come speak your piece with thousands and thousands and thousands of other OU fans and there's a lot of knowledgeable people with a lot of connections inside the program that are on our site. You get a lot of insider information, not only from us, but from a lot of the fans. So $9.99 gets you the whole month. So you can get through this whole month as they try to make championship November run. You're going to start seeing that. It doesn't have the same kick after a loss, but it still is championship November coming up this week, starting for Oklahoma. And you can get it $9.95 a month, or you can sign up for a whole year and get all the way through almost all of, or at least the first 8 or 9 games of the SEC schedule in 2024. All the, I guess, national signing, both national signing days, the bowl games, the transfer portal, spring, fall practice, the champion barbecue, the party in the palace, all that stuff, all to September, October, what have you. If you sign up today, $99.95, and it's worth it. We're there to answer your questions. We're there to talk, to mingle with you, to make sure you stay in the know. All things Oklahoma Sooners football, basketball, baseball, softball, recruiting, whatever.
Yeah, folks, listen, nobody's covering recruiting like we are at OUinsider.com. I can promise you that. Ton of recruiting content, ton of fresh recruiting content up on the site right now. And oh, by the way, if you're into Sooner Hoops, they're about to kick off their 2023-24 season, year 3 under Porter Moser. We got you covered in that department as well. Jesse and our man Brody Lusk have you covered on all things Sooner Hoops. And when I say all things Sooner Hoops, I mean all things Sooner Hoops. There was a secret scrimmage today that the Sooners took part in. You want an update on that? OUinsider.com is the place to be. For Brandon, for Brian, for Jesse, I'm Parker. Thanks for joining us on this installment, this somber installment, this vitriol-laden installment of the OU Insider Under the Visor postgame podcast. Y'all take it easy. We'll talk again soon.